So it is actually quite a great opportunity to be here. Love to be in Poland. I think this is my 14th time in Warsaw. So I always take the opportunity to be here and try as best as I can to use the opportunity. So today is the no car day. It was actually quite crowded coming here. So honestly, let's start by asking how many of you used a car to come here today? That's not bad, actually. Quite a few of you are not raising their hands. That's good enough. So I asked this question 3 times before I came here, and I decided finally I'm going to ask you. Okay? So I was told I have an hour to talk to you about measurement of marketing effectiveness online, and I can do this one of 2 ways. I can either speak for an hour or speak a little bit and then allow a lot of time for questions and conversations. Having been in Warsaw 14 times before, normally I don't get questions and conversations. 1, because I'm very boring, and 2, it's because this is Poland. So you guys now are going to make the choice. Are you going to ask questions? Raise your hand. You see? Not one single hand. Okay. One question. So here is 2 minutes. 2 questions, 4 minutes. Okay. All right. So we're going to try and shoot for 50 minutes and maybe 10 minutes for questions. I think that would be a reasonable way of doing it. In the middle, however, if there is that burning question in your heart, don't keep it. Okay? So if there is something inside you want to talk about, just let me know and we'll discuss it. So one thing to put in perspective is I actually think the worst thing you can ever do is to come to those events and try to talk about your products and sell your stuff. Okay, and so please understand that none of what I'm going to show you today is something we're trying to sell. Everything we're going to show you today are free tools that you get on the web for free. And this is basically our way of sharing our knowledge, what we learn about consumers with the rest of the world, right? And so basically, all of these are things that once you come out of here are things you can go and immediately use on the web, use those Google tools to try and understand what consumers are doing. So in my bright past before Google, back in 1998, I was actually a brand manager. And I spent most of my life moving between being a geek and being a marketing person. So I was a marketing person in consumer goods between 1995 and 1998. Before that, I worked in IBM. After that, I worked in Microsoft. And now I'm working in Google. I don't really know if I'm in Google, I'm working in technology or marketing, because they're really very blurry in Google. We don't know which one it is. When I was a brand manager, I think most of you will agree that the most fun part of it is that creative process, right? So the idea of creating things out of a concept and, putting something out there and then getting an Effie award for it, right? That was a fantastic feeling. I never got one, unfortunately. It tells you how bad I was. But the idea is of creating something from scratch and trying to build it all the way to creativity is fantastic. As a brand manager, and probably the geek in me was still, however, suffering from my lack of ability to measure anything. Okay, I had very little data. I had to guess all the time, and sometimes I guessed wrong. And when you guess wrong, you get very, very bad ratings. Okay, so I was always fronted. I just tried to remember some of the questions that would come to my mind. What are the current trends? You always get to know some trends, but what is really happening right now? Where is my audience really? Are they reading that magazine or are they watching that TV show? Exactly where they are today. How much is that spot worth? Actually, was one burning question for me. Am I really paying the right price? Am I, getting return on my investment, and so on and so forth? I think one of the areas that really concerned me at the time was the contradicting data, right? I think most of you see that as well. So you get multiple reports. Every report tells you something. You have to triangulate somehow and say the truth is probably this, right? But it was never, for me at least, it was never that accurate where I could say, look, consumers are here, they're doing that, they like this, they don't like that. If I do the campaign this way in those colors, they will come, okay? I never had that ability. And of course, that meant that I spent a little less time on the enjoyable creative process and a lot more time than I would have wanted to on doing those 4 things. One is trying to explore and understand where consumers are going or my customers are going, trying to measure and verify at least as quickly as I can if my campaigns are actually being effective, trying to predict and forecast what's going to happen in the near future and the further in the future, and then plan and blend all of this in something that is meaningful and basically translates into a winning campaign. So I'm going to use the time today to try and take you through some of the tools that the internet is providing to try and give you a lot of this now almost real time, all the time. Okay, I'll spend a little more time on the explore and understand bit because it's actually quite complex and there are no other tools that match what the internet can give you on this, and then a little less time on the other three. So I'll start from a case study that is dear to my heart. I studied this extensively, and I'm sure some of you own the brands I'm going to talk about. So if you think back in the 1920s, in the United States, the Great Depression followed by the World War meant that people had to conform to certain expectations from the community. If you think of a woman of the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, the success for that woman was getting that husband looking neat, you know, raising children and, you know, being happy in that little family place. And most of the advertising and most of the communication and movies you would see from that era was really very conformative. A woman was expected to behave in a very specific way to be included in the community. And having all the immigrants coming into the United States at the time, it meant that those immigrants as well had to fit in and blend in somehow, so they were recreating themselves almost, I think the right word, they were faking it. All the time they were faking their look, they were faking the way they behaved just to fit within this new community that they just moved into. Back in the 50s, Clairol invented the instant hair dye, and Clairol, you know, Nice and Easy and Miss Clairol and all of those products were basically a fantastic product. When they showed it to the professionals, professionals felt that this was an unbelievable, you know, breakthrough, that you can dye your hair so quickly. But the market was so small that Clairol was facing a challenge. Only 7% of the U.S. community, of the U.S. women at the time, would actually dye their hair. And those 7% were really more of the night girls. So, you know, what wasn't a very nice connotation if you think about it. And so the campaign they came up with, maybe you'll remember this, was quite a breakthrough. It was this one.
Does she or doesn't she? Now you can shampoo in the natural-looking hair coloring. New shampoo formula, Miss Clairol. It's for busy gals who want to shampoo in the natural look of Miss Clairol and want it fast, easy. Does she or doesn't she? Hair color so natural only your hairdresser knows for sure. And now you can shampoo it in. New shampoo formula, Miss Clairol, or cream formula as always.
So messaging of Miss Clairol was quite interesting, actually. When you think about it, what they did really was trying to say, okay, you have the right to choose the way you look. You don't have to fake it all the time. You can actually be a blonde if you want to. But as you can see, more of the ads were a little less brunette than she was, or a little less brown than she was. She was trying to give that impression of that little girl, I'm a good mother, I'm a good housewife. Most of the ads were really done in a way that rewards her by being accepted and being successful. And those campaigns actually took the market by storm. So between 1956 and the early 70s, that market grew from 7% to 40%, with Clairol being almost the market share leader on that category. Until in the 70s, a French company came and said this.
What would you give to have time in the morning to think about how you look? I'm thrilled if my hair looks good. And it does. I color it with Preference by L'Oreal. It has very special conditioning that gives my hair tons of shine. And shine makes everything about hair better. The color's glossy, the look is healthy. Sure, Preference is more expensive. But every morning as you race by the mirror, you can say, I'm worth it.
I think for all of us marketeers, you will...
From L'Oreal.
So I'm worth it was a breakthrough. I think for all of us, we saw that and we felt, oh man, why didn't I think of that, right? So I was a man, so I couldn't think of that. But the 70s, a woman in the 70s was really a totally different woman than the Clairol woman, right? So she was much more independent. She was much more, you know, she was out in the workplace. She was busy. She was, you know, fighting for her, you know, equality. She was fighting for her freedom. the pregnancy pill meant that she made many more important decisions than just, dyeing her hair what color, right? Also, we're at 40% of the community dyeing their hair. Women didn't really need to explain why they dyed their hair anymore, right? So it moved from does she or doesn't she to I'm worth it, right? It was all about my self-worth. It was all about I am a woman, I care about me, I care about how I look. And you know what? I'm not only going to dye my hair, I'm going to find the most expensive product on the market to do that because I'm worth it, right? And that message took America by storm, right? In the next 7 years, they crossed 50% market share, right? Which was seriously eye-opening. And that market is now more than $1 billion. Now, I would like you to understand so Clairol was head-on in the 50s, but they missed the mark in the 70s, and a different message, a different trend meant that a totally different market leader emerged. Think about the differences. One of them, she's being spoken about by a man, and her reward is to be accepted by that man. Even the ad itself is in a very strange man voice. Here, she's much more glamorous. She's not that girl from next door. She's much more shiny. She's much more, into herself and what she does for herself. And that trend meant the major shift between night and day for the brands. Now, I will take you now a step further and ask you to think about today's girl, right? Because today's girl is none of those, right? As a matter of fact, this picture is, a royalty-free picture, of course, but, it is exactly every teenager I can think of, right? It is exactly my daughter. My daughter is 16. She's exactly like that with her notebook on her on her lap, music in her ear, and her phone in her hand, and doing 7 things at a time. And the problem with this generation is they don't take 30 years to change their mind. They're changing their mind literally every 2 years, every 2 months, sometimes every 2 days. If you ask them if Google is cool anymore, actually she says no, I'm her father. She says Google is not the coolest anymore, right? She actually thought for a while Facebook was cool, then Twitter is cool, then BlackBerry Messenger is cool, then, I don't know what. YouTube is cool, and it's just changing all the time. The speed at which you need to capture the trend that Clairol missed is now, I think, in the days, sometimes in the weeks or days, you have to be that fast. So let me share with you how we do it on the internet, right? I think most of you will agree, if a lot of people are happily doing the same thing, that means that thing is good, right? As a marketer, I need to pay attention to that thing. On the internet, we call that the wisdom of the crowds. I truly encourage you to read the book. So the wisdom of the crowd basically says, if billions of people or millions of people are doing the same thing repeatedly, then that definitely says that they know better than the expert, right? Now, on the internet, what we get, I'll start from search because really it's the core of what we do. On the internet, what we get is we don't only get a few people smiling, we get millions and millions of people a day. We get 4 billion queries, I think, a day or a month? I don't remember. A day? A day. My God. So anyway, even if it's a month, it's a lot, right? So when you think about all of those, this is wisdom of the crowd at its ultimate level. So inside Google, we had a lot of that information. It helped us make search better for a while, and then we took that information and we gave it back out to the community through a tool that we call Insights for Search. And for me to drink my tea, I'm going to have somebody explain what Insights for Search is.
Google Insights for Search shows you what people are searching for, where they're searching, and when. You can spot trends and find out what people around the world are interested in. For example, where is surfing most popular? Using Google Insights for Search, we can see that Australia, New Zealand, and Portugal top the list. On the global map, Australia is the darkest, with the highest popularity for the search term surf. Click City, and Honolulu, Sydney, and Perth top the list. You can compare searches from different geographic locations. So, when do people in Australia and the United States search for ski?
Okay, so
As you might expect, searches peak during the winter. But since these countries experience winter at opposite times of the year, searches for ski in one country are at a high, while searches in the other country are at a low. You can see forecasted data that extrapolates from historical trends.
Okay, so ski and surf are very general terms, but you can really dig down deep and try to identify specifics for that. Let me share with you a few examples. We used insights for search to realize that when the US played against Slovenia in the World Cup, that the Americans did not know what Slovenia is, right? So as a matter of fact, on that one day, the number one search in America was, where is Slovenia? What is that, right? We actually used it a little more productively when we looked at the Eurovision last year. So we could actually predict the winner of the Eurovision by an accuracy of 1%. Not only the winner, but the number of votes that this winner will get by an accuracy of 1%, by a difference of 1%. This is very, very significant. But to us, it was actually quite straightforward. It was something we do every day. It's like we expect that people are going to search for a certain video or a certain song, so we want to cache it so that they get it very quickly. And so we do those calculations on the fly, and we can easily see the popularity of one video versus the other. You can take that and go into much more serious examples. So now let's go into the serious part of this. I took the consumer goods category, certain brands. If there is somebody from P&G, nothing confidential here. All of this is available on the web, right? So I have here shampoo, laundry, and shavers as categories. Comparing those categories between each other, you can easily see the trend over time. You can scale down the time scale of this, and you can see the popularity of what people are searching for and interested in. You can narrow that down to specific brands. So you can compare Pampers, Gillette, whatever, okay? And as you can see here, interest is not only in the past, but we use very, very complex algorithms to compare that and give you a future forecast. So the last bit of the chart will tell you, and this is the interest we expect to see in that brand in terms of forecast going forward. It takes into consideration seasonality. So as you can see here, we expect a shift between Pampers and Gillette at the end of the chart. You can narrow down to country, city, or any IP location that we can measure on the internet, right? So you can find out exactly where consumers are generating those interests, and you can also find out exactly what they're searching for, what is on their mind, what words are they thinking of when they generate that interest. So when it comes to Pampers, number one search is baby Pampers, number two is Huggies. Okay, very interesting, eye-opening, notice for P&G. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there is what we call rising searches. Rising searches might not be the biggest searches that people are searching for now. It's not the biggest interest of the whole wisdom of the billions of queries, but it is the ones that are growing as faster than all others. And of course, I printed this actually out in 2009. So it was basically economic crisis time, and printable Pampers coupons was the number one thing. So a very strong message for Pampers to say maybe it's price now that we need to work on. Okay, and it was growing 300% higher than the average query. Okay, same for shampoo. Here you see what the top queries are: best shampoo, dry shampoo, and so on. And as you can see on the rising searches side, SLS-free, sulfate-free shampoo was basically the highest growing query at 1,450% higher than the average rate. Okay. Now, as a brand manager, you can do a lot of those things for your own brand, right? And once you do that, you can then go to search and just search for those terms, right? So I was, how do I say this? I was rude or courageous enough to actually stand in front of P&G and show them those numbers. So we took the word best shampoo, we typed it in the search box and clicked enter. No P&G. First time mother tips for Pampers and what have you. No P&G. Best shampoo for dry damaged hair. I think you know the story. Okay. So the idea is with such an eye-opening positioning for them in terms of what consumers are interested in and where they are when consumers are interested in those things. P&G has actually moved very significantly over the last couple of years. I don't know if you're aware of that, but there was a recent PR announcement that P&G in the US, for example, now is one of our top 10 advertisers, as they are one of the top 10 advertisers globally, in all media. And across the globe, actually in Poland, for example, I think P&G is doing really, really well on capturing the online potential. So that can, oops, I'm animating that again because I pressed back just to remind you. Okay. Now, it can go into much bigger questions, right? So, I'm going to touch on this topic because it's a very hot topic. So in economically, challenging times, we all know, Poland is growing less than 2% GDP. Next year, is this going to change? Is this the end of the world? I know countries that where the GDP growth is negative. Is this really the end of the world? And in Google, we've been preaching to a lot of businesses since this whole thing started, that this is really not the end of the world. It's a very significant shift of the world, but it's not the end of the world. I'll give you a few examples. Did the car industry, did the US car makers suffer because of the economic crisis? I'm sorry to say no. They suffered because they continued to make SUV, very large vehicles, when, as you can see over the years, the trend has moved to much more fuel efficiency, much less pollution, and hybrid. Okay, it cannot be denied that if you continue to make SUVs, people are less interested in SUVs. In the middle of the crisis, if you take the core of the crisis in the US, the real estate market, did the real estate market in the US collapse? As a matter of fact, it declined 18% in terms of interest. But people shifted their interest on the red chart on the top. They started to search much more for rent than for buy. Okay, so I know of real estate developers in my home country, in the UAE, in Dubai, that shifted their entire business from selling the units that they had to leasing the units that they had. Okay, and that approach actually made them one of the ones that came out of the crisis very, very successful. Here is food. So do people really eat less? No, they just stop interest in gourmet restaurant, and they have much more interest in family restaurants, right? So they're a little more cautious around where they eat. This is Germans. Do they travel less? The Germans are not traveling less. It's just that if you lived in Spain in the beginning of the crisis with the sterling pound going down, Germans decided to shift a lot of their travel to the UK because it was economically viable, comparatively to the euro. And then now that the British pound is stabilizing, then maybe that trend will change. Okay, so you can answer some very significant questions at that. I'm just giving you a few examples, but I think you should probably take that and ask the questions that you want. So all you need to do is go to Insights for Search. Go to Google, type the words Insights for Search, and it will be the first result on the top, I hope, if it's still popular. Okay? Now, let's take this to another level. So let's talk about video. Okay? So what is the visual preferences? What is the video preferences for consumers? I'll give you a couple of minutes on a product that we have.
Almost 400 million people watch over 1 billion videos on YouTube every day. This gives us a great insight into the viewing habits of the world. With Insights for Audience, we'd like to share some of this information with you. Let's walk through an example of how an advertiser would use Insights for Audience to understand their audience on YouTube. YouTube has hundreds of different interest categories at various levels of granularity. For example, we can classify people as being generally into beauty and personal care videos, all the way down to people who are specifically interested in cosmetics. In this example, our advertiser decides that he's interested in women between the ages of 18 and 54, living in the US, who are into any kind of face and body care. This is where the rich video viewing data YouTube collects really shows its value. For example, this audience watches 29 times more face and body care videos than the average user. You can also see the other kinds of videos this audience likes to watch. These guys watch less than the average quantity of automotive videos. No surprise there. Note that the dark blue columns are clickable, so that you can see the popularity of subcategories of videos. These ladies like face and body care videos, but not fitness videos. Specifically, they like cosmetics and skincare, but not hair removal videos. You can scroll through all the videos this audience has been watching recently, with the most popular at the top. If one looks interesting, click on the thumbnail to watch a preview of the video. You can also see what search terms they're using. Note that the videos and search terms will be refined as you analyze an audience's behavior around certain types of video.
So once again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but this is very, very powerful, right? So in my past career as a brand manager, I had to depend a lot on my gut feeling, right? I had to tell myself, yeah, this seems to be what they're interested in. Here you have some concrete data of exactly what is your target segment interested in, at least the ones that are on the web. And in most of our countries today, most of them are on the web, right? At least the AB class consumers are on the web. So when you think about it, it can give you some very eye-opening information. And I'll tell you, you'll be surprised when you see what videos and what search terms are they really interested in. They're very unlike what we normally expect. And I have a question. Fantastic.
I've used this tool, and I was wondering, where do you get the demographic data from? For example, the age, sex, etc. Is it from registered users?
We have some registered users, but we have some behavioral aspects, right? So we don't really know which user it is. So some users kindly tell us, okay, you know what? I'm happy to tell you who I really am, and basically we don't use that individual information, but we use the aggregate information of that category to provide this, but also behavioral information. So think of Amazon.com, people who bought this also like that, okay? We can easily imagine that people who are interested in video games, who are following the Halo Reach launch, are probably teenagers, probably a little more male than female, right? And by aggregating billions of touch points, you can then start to almost detect to a reasonable level of accuracy which categories the consumer or segments the consumer falls in. So it's not entirely registration information. It's also a lot of machine intelligence in terms of identifying how behavior maps to a certain segment. Okay. So I urge you to try that. It's very, very significant. Now, any other questions now that we opened that direction? Okay, I'll hope for some more. So, what better way than if I was to understand so if I use this to design which advertising am I supposed to make for those consumers, what better way to understand exactly which advertising they want to see than to ask them, right? So this is what we used to do in the past through focus groups, try to take a sample of the consumer we're talking to, and then try to ask them a few questions. We do that now in hundreds and thousands and millions sometimes. So I'm sharing with you a couple of examples from Poland. So this is Millennium Bank. So some of you may have seen this. So Millennium Bank wanted to create their way of advertising their website on their online presence to consumers, and instead of doing it themselves, they went out to people on the web and said, hey, tell us what you would like us to show you as an ad for Millennium Bank, okay? Which was actually a very clever idea, and basically they thought that Hubcha was becoming a little boring, and he basically stood there and said, I'm becoming a little boring, give me a new look. And so people voted. People submitted videos of how they want the commercial to look like. I think more than a few hundreds of them were submitted, and people then voted, as you can see on the top spots, in terms of which one they think is the more favorite for them in how to be advertised to. And so this was the winning video.
Chwila, ty dokąd? To jest impreza zamknięta. Dla postaci o wyjątkowych zdolnościach.
Subcio, jestem Hubcio. Oferuję wyjątkowe konto internetowe w Banku Millennium. Bezpłatne prowadzenie, bezpłatne założenie i darmowe bankomaty. A do tego karta maestro, która zwraca 1% wartości transakcji. A poza tym opanowałem tajną sztukę obezwładniania ruchem brwi.
Wow! Swój chłop! Chłopaki, to jest super Hubert.
So no trial and error there. Understand, right? So the consumer is telling them, advertise to me this way, I will like it. Okay? that is priceless in my view. So another example is Era. So Era basically partnered with Katy Perry.
Cześć, I'm Katy Perry, and I need your help. Do you have a spark inside of you? Do you have a dream or a talent or a goal? If you have, I want you to share it with the world in my new music video. So Poland, join me. I really hope you'll help me make this happen.
Chcesz wystąpić z Katy Perry w jej najnowszym teledysku? Wejdź na www.eramusicgarden.pl. Najlepiej dzięki Blue Connect. Teraz od 39 zł miesięcznie z modemem za złotówkę.
Do zobaczenia!
Takie rzeczy tylko w Erze.
Okay, they had 1,800 videos submitted for this. That's quite significant, actually, in 5 weeks. And more than 1 million views, or close to 1 million views, I think 900,700 and something. And quite a bit of engagement, as a matter of fact, in terms of people watching those videos, creating those videos. I think Katy seems to be quite interesting for Polish young people. So basically, their approach this time was slightly different. They said, you don't vote for it. We're going to use it internally and understand how people want to do this. A slightly different approach, providing the same result at the end. So we're going to now play, what is it? Poland's Got Talent. Okay, I'm going to show this video. So this video is actually 2 minutes. If you guys get bored in the middle, raise your hand, and if I get more than half of the room raising their hands, I'll stop the video. Okay? So this is the next.
Katy, w swoim nowym teledysku może być czymś rozejść.
Okay, so no hands raised. Nobody wanted to stop the video. This is actually the second most watched video of all the videos submitted. And as you can see, you can spot a lot of trends. One of them is that the 30-second format is really going away on the web, right? So a lot of people are actually much more comfortable with longer formats, much lower quality, but much more real, I would say.
But I can add one thing, because this guy is now performing in Era.
Is
chosen and he's playing hero in new Era.
Oh, is that true? I didn't know that. Okay, there you go. Fantastic. So now you can also use that as an audition tool. So yeah, so that is quite interesting as well. Okay, so with that, I will stop talking about exploring and understanding. But I hope I gave you a cross section of some of the things you can do on the web to try and get that done. We have not yet gone to the point where Google will give you one button. You click on that button and an ad is generated. Okay, you still have to do a lot of the research yourself, but it seems to be a long way there. Any questions or comments before we move faster through the rest of them? Okay, so measure and verify is now that you understand the market and the trends and how things are changing, you start making your campaign, you put it out there, and campaigns cost a lot of money. I think all of you know that. It costs a lot of effort, they cost a lot of long nights, and they caused a lot of uncertainty within our organizations in terms of, is this right or is this wrong? And so I personally had a very interesting experience as a brand manager. We wanted to do a trade campaign, a trade promotion, a trial promotion. So basically we wanted to attach a CD, a music CD at the time, to our product to encourage trial. The consumer base was more British. So the trade manager said we should include Oasis, and I said Chumbawamba, right? A geek. I mean, what can you think? I basically looked at the charts, looked at the trending music on the charts, and Chumbawamba was going through the roof. And so, mathematically, it looks to me like it's Chumbawamba. I'm going to play that song for you so that you remember me every time you hear it in the future. Anybody knows this one? Okay. Okay, so not bad, actually. It's not a bad choice of music. It was #1 on the charts. And damn, Kevin, he said, let's try both, right? So he basically said we're going to have 10 cartons on the shelf on one supermarket. We're going to have 10 cartons with Oasis, 10 cartons with Chumbawamba, and 30 cartons without any, so that we limit the promotion. We came back a week later. There were no Oasis CDs, only 5 without a CD, and all 10 Chumbawambas, right? So every time I hear this song, I remember my failure. Now, it turns out on the internet that we do this try both all the time. So in Google, we call it A/B testing, right? So in A/B testing, because the internet is so easy to develop a concept on, what you do is if you have an idea for any web presence whatsoever, anything on the web, you basically put it in multiple formats. You have 3 ideas, put the 3 ideas out there, and through a very simple tool, you can direct 1/3 of your traffic to each of them, and then see what happens, right? If people add to cart 14 times on one and 25 on the other, then basically this is your winning combo, right? And we do this all the time in so many subtle A/B tests that you guys actually go through as Google users. So if we decide to change the font by a 0.1 of a pixel in Google, we do an A/B test, right? If we decide that we should have the navigation on the left or on the right, we do an A/B test. And it's happening all the time, and people will tell us, how much they like it through their behavior and usage. Now, let's take a more complex example and talk about video campaigns. And I'm not only talking about video campaigns online here. I'm talking about the video campaigns you put on TV, right? Is there a way, instead of doing a focus group, to try and do a video campaign on TV and test that on the web before you put it on TV? So I'm going to share with you quickly a half a minute on one product that we have for YouTube called Insights for YouTube.
The first thing that Insight will show you are your views, or how many times your videos have been watched. You can check out the highs and lows of your viewership by 1 day, 5 days, 3 months, and up. The next tab in Insight is popularity. This shows you how popular your video has been over time. It measures how much more or less popular your video is compared to all other videos in that geographic market. The popularity map shows you in which countries your videos are the most popular. The most popular countries will be dark green. The third tab is the Discovery tab, and is my favorite feature on Insight. Discovery tells you how people, your viewers, are finding your videos. Maybe they're finding your videos through related videos, through a YouTube search, perhaps external links, or an embedded player. It's really fun to find out how people are discovering and watching your videos. So here's checking out your videos on YouTube. You can find out by clicking on the Demographic tab. The graph shows you the percentage of age ranges for your viewers for both genders. The pie chart, on the other hand, breaks down the percentage of your viewers by male and female. And last, click on the Hotspots tab to check out the ups and downs of viewership at any given moment in your video. The higher the graph, the hotter your video. The Hotspot feature gives you great insight into your video's ability to retain your audience attention, and it can maybe give you some great ideas as to how to make your video hotter.
Okay, so with Insights for YouTube, I'm going to share with you a practical example. If Jan allowed us to share this. So have you seen this ad?
it to the hip, hip, hop it, you don't stop. The rock it to the bang, bang, baby, say up, jump, the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat.
Now what you hear is not a test, I'm rocking to the beat. And me, the groove, and the friends from five to the beat. See, I am Wonder Mike, and I'd like to say hello.
So how many like this ad, by the way? Let me ask you this. Okay, how many don't? Raise your hand, so I'm sure you're awake. Okay. So every time I ask this, there is a very reasonable split in the room. Never more than 40-60, right? 40% like it a lot, 40% say it's fake. Okay? And it was actually interesting that Evian only played this in France at the time when we got those screenshots. They played it only in France. And they were trying to understand how consumers will behave, how consumers will react to the ad. So here are a few insights, right? So first of all, at the time they played it only on TV in France, it was viewed 15 million times on YouTube in that pattern, right? The consumer profile was 25 to 44 in the majority, and male split was quite reasonable, a little more male than female, surprisingly. And as you can see here, the popularity, the countries in which this was very popular, the country it was most popular on was the US. The ad never played in the US before, okay? They took then the audience attention, a hotspot chart. This is very, very useful. You cannot do that elsewhere, right? By putting that ad out there, you can see that people's engagement in that ad continued as the ad, every second of the ad passed. This is really the chart you should shoot for. People are more and more interested in the ad as time progresses. Let me show you another example just to clarify my point. So here is a music video. As you can see here, there are points in this ad where you are almost losing your consumer, right? So the consumer interest, and we measure this by the number of times people switch away from the ad and so on and so forth, or behave differently. So you can see that there are parts in that video where people are really not interested and you're almost losing them. And if you're a marketing manager, you can basically say, okay, I'm going to change that clip. I'm going to find out what's wrong with this second. Okay? More than that, you can see how the ad is being found, right? Are people searching for it? Are people searching for something that leads them to it? Are they getting a link from a friend or a referral? So you can see here, things like viral, things like external links, things like related videos, and so on. And by knowing that, you understand if people are actually recommending that ad to each other, or did they just stumble upon it on YouTube. And you can see that over time, and based on that, you can actually build your strategy and see how you're going to advertise for that as well. Just to share with you very quickly, the results of this ad was actually quite significant. So everywhere they played the ad, people who saw it online, which is the dark graph, the dark red graph, had higher favorability, higher preference, and on all the brand attributes, they responded more positively to the brand when they saw it online than when they saw it offline, okay? Than those who saw it offline, which to me is quite interesting because it says that the ad is much more suited for the online consumer. It's a little more hip, it's a little more high-tech, if you want. And as you can see, if you compare the intent to purchase on the blue charts, those who watched it offline had a much higher intent, online had a much higher intent to purchase. When the lights switch off, does this mean I should end? No? Okay. I'm almost done though. So measure and verify, there are so many tools that you can do this. The idea is you need to start getting into that mood of trying things out, right? You're going to put an ad on the web and you're going to get a few million views for it. Don't think of this as you've burnt your thunder, right? Because there are quite a few out there that will see it afterwards, but they'll see the right one. Predict and forecast is shocking. So please brace yourselves in your seat because this is very big, okay? So in economically challenging times, I'm using that as an example and the old guy figure on the right-hand side, so a little more wisdom. And basically, consumer behavior changes in economically challenging times. It changes on any trend, really. But in economically challenging times, they start to search more for jobs because there are more people out of a job, right? And we can capture that, and you can see here the trend in our job category, unemployment and welfare category, has been significantly growing since 2008 across the globe, okay? Which is a trend that we can, take into what we predict here as the red line, okay? So the red line is really Google's model of predicting what the unemployment numbers are going to look like from the US government every month. We publish this a month before the US government. And you can see the amazing accuracy, the amazing fit between the actual numbers published in black a month later and the numbers predicted by the Google model in red a month earlier. Okay? Now, when you think of this, this is quite significant. The way we do it, by the way, is we take the trends, again, the wisdom of the crowds, and we apply an economic fitting model. So we add an algorithmic model to just adjust for any abnormalities in that trend, and you get a fit curve. So you can take this and take it to other parts of the distressed economy. So how are credit cards, credit cards behaving, or consumer loans behaving, and so on. In Google, we call this concept nowcasting. So instead of forecasting, it's nowcasting. You can know now what people are interested in right this minute. Okay? Now, you can take this further and look at brands. Okay? So I'm going to show you here Honda, for example, the interest in red. This is Google Trends versus, black is the actual car maker reports. So this is the actual number of cars they sold every month. And in red is the number of searches that people did around Honda during that month. So even the trend on its own is quite fit. As you can see here in Dodge, in the case of Dodge, there were other reasons that the chart did not fit. And when you apply the economic model, the algorithmic model, you can see how the fit is. Okay? So we're now making a lot of those reports for now in the US available online. So some standard reports in the automotive industry, advertising and marketing and so on. It gives you a very interesting trend on how the global economy is going. These are reports where we have already done the economic fitting model. And we've also published the research paper of exactly how we did the economic fitting. You can find that on the research blog of Google. And it tells you exactly how we did it, so you can probably do that for your own brands and products. Okay, so this is quite interesting. I'm going to end very quickly on plan and blend. Okay, on plan and blend, I think the idea is how to put all of this together. And one of the very interesting trends we've noticed is that there is a very significant correlation between what happens offline and what happens online. Right? So we ran a study with Pontiac, the top chart, where basically that was back in 2007. Where basically we took the times at which they showed an ATL campaign, in the charts in red. So the bottom chart in red is basically every time they showed a TV commercial, right? And the blue chart is exactly what happens on search related to the terms they were advertising, right? So every time you can expect that. In Poland specifically, where Google is very successful, every time you're going to show an ATL campaign on TV, people will just take their computers out and start searching. Right? What is that product that they told me about if they catch that interest? So, not so nicely for Pontiac at the time. What was the number one website for users when people search for a four-wheel sedan car, for example? The number one site on top was Honda, right? So every time they showed their ATL campaign, the clicked site was actually Honda. Every single time, simply because they were not present in the online world. So they ran a very effective ATL campaign that drove the exact actions they wanted, which is that the user went and wanted more information about their product, and they unfortunately ended up sending the consumer to Honda, almost like funding Honda's marketing campaigns, right? And if you're from the auto industry, you know that 55% of people change their mind about the car they're planning to buy, and as they make the buying decision. So you set out first to buy a VW and you end up buying an Audi is a very, very common common behavior. So accordingly, when you start to see that, when you start to fund that behavior for your competitor, it's not a good idea. So what we've been trying to work with our partners, partner agencies, and our customers is to try and have what we call a blended across the media mix strategy. So this is not what most companies do today. What most companies do today is they say, online is becoming important, let me move my budget from 5 to 7%. Okay? That is actually the exact wrong thing to do. Sometimes you can say to yourself, let me move my budget from 7 to 4. Okay? But do the 4 in the right places. You have to find those interaction points. You have to find, what is my ATL going to drive online? If I show this on TV, what is going to be the expected behavior? If a Samsung Galaxy ad shows on TV tomorrow, what are users going to search for? What are users going to find on YouTube? What are users going to do in other forms of media? And blend that so that your strategy captures them on every minute of the way. If I put them in a radio campaign, then how do I advertise when they get to work? If I put that on a on TV, where do I put my follow-up? Do I put that on search or YouTube? And so by blending all of that together, I'm going to close with an example that is a 2007 example, but something that I'm really proud of. Is a campaign we did with BA, where basically they used the technology of Google Earth to tell people, if you're traveling, which is what people do, right? If you advertise to them to travel, what they'll do is they'll go to Google Earth to plan their travel, right? So they used Google Earth, Google Maps, Google Search, a lot of online banners, as well as a TV campaign to capture the user from every side. This is what the campaign they played on TV.
British Airways World Offers is now on. Book by September the 26th at BA.com.
Okay, so actually at the time the campaign was running, if you would use Google Earth and enable the BA layer, you would actually see the cloud. If you search for Milan, you would see the cloud saying 25 pounds, right? So that level of integration of the consumer experience is, I think, something that we see more and more leading advertisers doing. With that, I will close by saying, hopefully we can try to solve a little bit of the right-hand side work for you, so that you spend a lot more time on the creative element of what you do. And maybe we now have 6 minutes for questions. One question, half a question, a comment, a nod, no, nothing? We're good? Question, okay.
How can you predict the attitudes or thoughts, insights for the people that are online non-consumers? In Poland, in fact, we have half of the population who uses internet and half of the population who doesn't use internet.
I don't, unfortunately. So it's true. I mean, the reality is that there will be a point not in the very distant future where everybody will be online. It's not the case today, right? What we see is that the trend setters are online, right? So the trend setters will behave in certain ways that may impact on the offline community, but it's not unfortunate. It's unfortunately not measurable for me, so I'm unable to capture that. But at least most of your AB consumers, most of your trendsetters are already there, right? In all age groups, in all backgrounds, and so if you capture that bit, maybe we can influence it. Offline, I think if you guys help us get them all there, then that would be a good way of doing it. Limitations, quite a few. So as I said, I mean our aim. Yeah. I mean our dream really is to find a way to tell you click here, and we will give you a 98% effective campaign, right? We're not there yet, right? And you have to understand that this is wisdom of the crowds, right? So the crowds behave in ways that may not be captured very quickly. I wanted to show you a chart actually around Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera network was the only broadcaster allowed to broadcast the World Cup in the Middle East, right? In the game of the UK and the US, they had a technical error and all screens went black, right? And for those 3 hours, the top query globally was streaming World Cup games online, okay? And all of them came from the Middle East. But it was such a quick blip, so you could see, right? And then the game is over, Al Jazeera fixed it, and everything went back normal, right? So some of those things are so quick that we don't really have the technology to be able to alert you for those yet. It could be something that we should also look at, understand what you're interested in, and find alerts and find stuff like that. It's still work in progress, but it's really have gone a long way. So I think there is a lot of information there.
I have a comment on the question. The
Please.
purchase process for a car,
Mhm.
Hyundai and Honda, or a water like Kia, is completely different.
That's
one
true.
Is impulse, one is. Do you have a rule of thumb or a ranking of product categories in which searching for information is more important and less important, or something like?
That's actually that's a very good question. So the reality is, one of the most active brands I have seen online are Coke. Okay, and I don't know if any of you have ever purchased a Coke online. No, right? And the purchasing behavior of Coke is very different, right? And if you're buying a car, it's definitely not a decision that you take like the way you take a Coke. We ran a research. I can share that with you if you want. We ran a research in the holiday season 2009 in the UK, where we started to measure the impact of online on offline in very interesting ways. So first of all, 85% of all consumers in the UK searched for a product before they bought it in Christmas, right? The interesting thing is how they behaved, and please don't quote me on the numbers. They may be a little off. Actually, I'll avoid the numbers and send the research. Some of them searched online and bought online, 43% as far as I remember. Okay, some of them searched online, went to the store, held the product in their hand, and then went back and bought online. Okay, 12%. 19% went to the store first, found the product they liked, and went back and purchased online. Okay, so when you think about those behaviors, which are very hidden, so you might not have been there in the store, advertising in that store when they held the product in their hand, but you could be there online when they end up searching for it to buy it, right? Or the other way around, you may not have been in the store visible when they searched online, but when they went to the store, which is, some people definitely bought offline as well, bought in the stores as well. They already had made up their mind, and they went to the seller in the store and said, okay, I'm looking for that XYZ product. So it seems to me that more and more now you're getting, and you should probably ask yourselves. I mean, you probably behave the same way, all of you. We're consumers at the end of the day. So more and more of us are actually integrating online as a very common part of what we do, right? It's just something that is almost like asking a friend or browsing in the shop and so on. So there is a very significant integration happening now. They are not two worlds anymore. Exactly how you predict behavior in one category or the other, I think, doesn't make a lot of difference. So what we've learned about our marketing, messages in the past remains the same. There are messages that are going to be call to actions. There are messages that are all about brand building, and there are messages that are about maybe comparative messaging and so on. And you're going to have to build them exactly the same way. I actually always talk about how when TV became big, radio didn't disappear, and our approach to marketing did not go away. People are people, so you need to communicate to them the same way. It's just that there is now such a big new medium that you need to integrate into this with the same marketing approach we've always learned, but have it as part of what you do. And I think from category to category, it depends on the category behavior. It doesn't really depend on whether it's online or offline. Okay, a lady question. How about that? Oh, there you go. Cookies. What is the problem? Yeah, we don't count a lot on cookies in Google. We try what was it called? There was a name for it, but there is so much happening, I don't remember. But for display advertising, we started to have a bit of cookie with the consent of the user, of course, other than the standard of the industry. But we don't depend on that. We depend much more on the waves, on the billions of people behaving in a certain way. So it doesn't really matter for me if so many Polish people are going in the direction of searching for a smartphone instead of a feature phone. Segmentation is not really that important for me to offer my service properly, right? But then when it comes to providing information to you, as I said, we don't really count entirely on cookies. Those who allow us to identify who they are, we thankfully include that information into our measurement. But we also look much more at general behaviors from the crowd. So, and it's quite accurate when it goes to millions and billions of people. It becomes quite accurate.
Are you seeing the tools you are offering? Are you seeing the trend that the marketeers are jumping on it and kind of endorsing it fully, or is it like, okay, I'm aware that they are there, but it's going to take months before we actually start using it?
Okay. So we're a very weird company, I'll tell you that. Okay, and I haven't always been in Google. I've worked in others, and we're a very strange company. We don't obsess about our technology being used or not, right? So we don't actively push for so many good things that are out there. What we know for sure is that every marketeer or every customer, every client in general, because this goes beyond marketing, it's also into business planning and lots of other things. Every time we explain those to the point where people knew how to use them well, people actually included them in their business planning. So I know of many CEOs in my region who will go back to their planning managers and say, give me the online trends on this before I can make a decision, right? I think the idea, if you ask me, and I'll be very honest and please don't be upset with me, is that we are so comfortable or so used to our day-to-day way of doing things that we end up doing the same marketing campaign the same way and expecting the same results. I think that's exactly where Clairol was caught, right? I think the problem is that when a big trend is happening, those who notice it first become leaders and winners, and those who follow afterwards, some of them struggle and make it, and some of them don't struggle at all. Some of them just go away. So I would say it's a question that every marketing manager should make. If I have such tools that are available for me, I use research from other firms all the time. Why don't I include that as part of what I do? I think is a very viable question. Okay, man, this is the best Polish event I ever been to. Okay, but we're over time. So Paul, what do you want to do? Okay.
Regarding images, I got a question about niche brands or niche services. Is it easy to count them, or?
There is nothing really niche on the web. There is nothing really niche on the web. I mean, if you understand the concept of the long tail, everything on the web is in hundreds of thousands and so on. Some trends are too small, okay? And unfortunately, I think again it's part of the limitation, right? So if you're going to ask me about what is the trend for 19th century vase antiques, I can give you a trend, but actually I can show you. I had some slides in there where Google will tell you we don't have sufficient data to make sure that this trend is true. Okay, so it will actually show on the chart that I think we normally say things like less than 10% of the users in this category actually are interested in this product.
Is there any chance to, for example, put some alerts that some trends are starting to be more emerging?
I actually think it's a good idea. I just said it now and then it was like I need to talk to the product group. It's actually a good idea if we put alerts on some of the trends. Actually, it's really a good idea. I cannot promise that. I don't write code anymore, but I will tell them, believe me, it's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. That's it?
Good. Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Before